Hey guys, it is Erin Van Handel from Sie Macht sewing blog, and I am here to do the Seamstress Tag. I thought it would be fun to jump on the Seamstress Tag train and to let some of my fellow sewists know a thing or three about me. So if that sounds like fun to you, then stay tuned. I'm Erin Van Handel. I am the force behind Sie Macht sewing blog. I am an unrepentant, selfish sewist, and I'm also an aspiring pattern maker. Eventually, I would like to design and sell my own PDF patterns. As far as personal stuff goes, I live in the Milwaukee suburb of Greendale with my husband, Mark. We've been married since 2003. And our two sons, Paul, who is almost 7 right now, and our little guy, John, who turned 3 in March. And we also have 3 cats. There's Elgato, and Mrs. Mimi Whiskers, and Lily. My favorite make is my by hand London Anna dress. I made it in glorious Liberty of London cotton tana lawn that I actually bought at the Liberty of London store in London. It's the perfect combination of pattern and fabric, and the fact that it's a London-based pattern maker and it's Liberty of London fabric. When I was figuring out what I was going to make that dress out of, I knew I had to go into my stash and finally cut into that beautiful Liberty of London fabric. And I'm so glad I did, because the dress turned out great. I can't really think of anything specifically for my most disastrous make. That's not to say that I haven't had sewing disasters. I definitely have had sewing disasters. The first thing that comes to mind is that I've stalled on making jeans a few times now, and it's the fly zipper that keeps just kicking my butt. Another make that kind of kicked my butt was when I made the chemo quilt for my late mom. The pattern is flying geese, which is basically it's just a bunch of right triangles. So actually sewing the quilt wasn't that difficult, but I didn't make my batting, which is, if you're not a quilter, which is the fluffy stuff in between your top layer and your bottom layer of the quilt, basically the front and back of the quilt. I didn't leave my batting oversized. I cut it. So basically, I had a really difficult time wrapping the binding to finish the edge of the quilt. Sewing that taught me a lot of lessons, and the quilt turned out great and I know it turned out great because my mom loved it, and that's the most important thing. But I learned so much while I was doing it, and it's not my best work, but it's probably my most meaningful work. My favorite place to go fabric shopping is Mood Fabrics. That is hands down the coolest fabric store I've ever been to. It's in Manhattan in New York City. It's huge, and it's just rows and rows and rows of the most delicious garment fabric you can imagine. And I've only been there once. But I do like to shop Mood online when I can. Their stuff is expensive, but it's really high quality. Closer to home, I like to shop at Vogue Fabrics, which is in a Chicago suburb, Evanston, for those of you keeping track at home. I usually get down there a couple times a year, and their selection is pretty good. It's miles better than anything local in Milwaukee. Sadly, Milwaukee doesn't really have a garment fabric store. And also, I really like buying fabric from Blackbird Fabrics, which is online. That is Caroline who's half of the Love to Sew podcast. That's her shop, and her fabrics are very well curated and they're really high quality. Not the cheapest, but the quality is so good. My most used pattern is something I'm wearing right now. It's the Briar top from Megan Nielsen. I have made, I think, 4 or 5 versions of this top. I love the scoop neck. The sleeves, I think, are just right. It has a high-low hem with a really nice curve to it, which I think is very feminine. It has options for 3/4 length and long sleeves along with this. And I just really love sewing it and I really love wearing it. It just works really well for me and my lifestyle. My most dreaded sewing task is tracing and cutting out pattern pieces. I am basically team trace because I like to have the option of potentially going back and tracing off larger sizes of a pattern, but that sewing task is kind of a bummer because I find that I have just all this excitement for a sewing project, but before I can actually get into like sewing it, I have to do all of this like paper craft stuff, which is not sewing. Although you can like put something on TV and just go to town on it. And I don't want to say mindless because you have to be paying attention to marking your notches and making sure you're tracing off the correct sizes, but it's not, I'm not really into that part. I also don't like ripping seams, which I think most sewists can agree usually represents something bad has happened, which makes everyone sad. Sewing, just let me sew. Just let me get in there and run the fabric under my needle. I really enjoy that, how tactile it is, how you really have to understand your machine, how your machine works, and how your thread is interacting with the bobbin and the presser foots, and you can go fast and you can go slow, and there's easing, and there's so much not sewing and sewing that it's so much fun to get to that part where you're going to start putting pieces of fabric together. I am a podcast addict, and along with listening to all the usual sewing podcasts, which I just feel like there's a new really good one like coming up every month or so, I listen to a lot of non-sewing related podcasts, so I thought I would share some of them with you. I am really into right now the We're No Doctors podcast, which is with Busy Phillips and Steve Agee, and they're basically actors who are hypochondriacs, and it's really funny. I love the Tara and Johnny podcast. That's Tara Lipinski and Johnny Weir. For kind of businessy sort of podcasts, I like Explore Your Enthusiasm with Tara Swigert, and The Accidental Creative and The Unmistakable Creative. Those all get my creative and business juices flowing and make me think about Sie Macht through a different lens and how I can better connect with the people who are reading it, and just like how to push myself like creatively and professionally. I'll have a list of more podcasts that I'm into right now in the related blog post for this video. The link for that is going to be in the description box below, so totally check it out. This is a hard one. For the past few months, I've been like treating myself to printed patterns because then I don't have that additional step of printing off a PDF, taping it all together, which is just, those are a couple of things that keep me away from my favorite thing, which I told you before, is sewing. but I love the immediacy of PDF patterns. And it's not the worst thing to have to like slow down and, you know, sit on the floor for a little while and like tape everything together. And it's kind of fun. It's like a big puzzle, and it's kind of cool to see like all the rows and columns, you know, come together and like, boom, there's your pattern. But I don't know. I probably lean a little more toward printed, but tough one. So I've answered 9 of the 12 questions for the Seamstress tag. If you want to see the answers for the last 3 questions, head on over to the blog post. The link is in the description box. There you'll find out what sewing machines I use, what some of my other hobbies are, and how I got started sewing. So if that interests you, you are invited to Sie Macht, and I hope to hear from you soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.